Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ms. Maguire online video lecture. Today we're covering tissue, the living fabric, physiology part. So let's go ahead and begin. We're going to start with the development of tissues. Now, all living organisms are actually started as a one single cell. Now, for human organism, this first cell is a zygote, and it's formed when sperm fertilize an egg or ovum. Now, then this zygote divides, forming a ball of a cell and the hollow ball of a cell, a sphere of a cell, right? And when we have enough number of cells, they start to differentiate. And this differentiation, when cells differentiate, they form primary germ layers. And we have three layers: ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. So they formed early in embryonic development and specialized to form the four primary tissue of human organisms, such as epithelial tissue, connective, nervous, and muscle tissue. Now, nerve and epithelial tissue, they arise from ectoderm. Muscle and connective tissue arise from mesoderm, and the tube forming the digestive tract originate from endoderm. That is some examples, but we're going to look at these primary germ layers in more detail, and we will see that actually epithelial tissue is formed for all three layers, for example, and we will cover some other structures and organs that form from these three primary germ layers. Okay, so here on the diagram, you can see 16-day-old embryo, and the primary tissue shown in three different colors. So we have ectoderm in blue, mesoderm in red, and endoderm in yellow, so right here. And you can see that epithelial tissue is formed for all three layers, right? Then ectoderm also give rise to a nervous tissue, and mesoderm differentiate into muscle and connective tissue. So it's mostly from mesoderm. But if you look here, we have more detailed list of organs and structures from all three layers. So ectoderm forms epidermis of skin and its derivatives, including sweat glands and hair follicles, epithelial lining of mouth and anus. So you see that's epithelial tissue, your skin, and superficial part of your skin, epidermis, and skin or epithelial lining of your mouth and anus, cornea and lens of eye, nervous system, we already mentioned over here, the nervous system from ectoderm, sensory receptors in epidermis, adrenal medulla, and adrenal gland is a gland sitting on top of the kidney, and it has inner part, medulla, and outer cortex. So medulla is actually nervous tissue. So that's why adrenal medulla also formed from ectoderm, tooth enamel, and epithelium of pineal and pituitary glands. And these two glands are located in your cranial cavity. Now, mesoderm, so you can see over here from mesoderm, we have muscle and connective tissue. So we will form notochord, skeletal system, and notochord then will differentiate into your spine. Skeletal system, so that's connective tissue, right? Because your bones are connective tissue. Muscular layer of stomach and intestine, excretory system, circulatory and lymphatic system, reproductive system, except of germ cells, dermis of the skin, lining of body cavities, and adrenal cortex. And endoderm gonna form epithelial lining of digestive tract, epithelial lining of respiratory system, lining of urethra, urinary bladder, and reproductive system, liver, pancreas, thymus, thyroid, and parathyroid glands. Okay, so we know how tissues are formed, but tissue get damaged through our life. And if tissue get damaged, that means we should have means to repair the tissue, right? And when repair tissue, we repair our organs. So how do we repair tissue? So here we have injury. An injury can either be acute. So when stimulus removed, then we have a regeneration or repair, or persistent tissue damage, right? So either it's acute that lasts for short period of time, or it's lasts for a longer period of time. So let's look at acute injury. When stimulus is removed, then tissue can repair or heal. So it can heal through regeneration. And regeneration means restitution of normal structure. So you replace damaged tissue with the same tissue type. And the tissue type that replacing damaged tissue has the same structural and functional characteristics. So for example, skeletal muscle regeneration after exercise, it's a very small damage to your muscles, and tissue can regenerate. Liver is very good at regeneration if it's an acute injury or after partial hepatectomy, and superficial skin wound, because a superficial skin wound, you damage epidermis only, it's epithelial tissue, and it's really good at regeneration. Now, when some tissue cannot regenerate, but it will repair by formation of scar. And that means we're replacing tissue, for example, muscle tissue, with scar tissue, that is connective tissue. So if you replace muscle with connective tissue, you do not expect that connective tissue to have the same structure and function, right? So that means that you will compromise this function of organ if it's repaired by scar. So example would be myocardial infarction. When cardiac muscles are damaged, they die, they're replaced by scar, or deep excisional skin wound. So if it's a deep wound, then you damage a dermis, and dermis will heal by scar formation. If you have persistent tissue damage, the organs and tissue will heal or repair by fibrosis. An example would be chronic inflammatory diseases such as cirrhosis, chronic pancreatitis, and pulmonary fibrosis. And of course, fibrosis will also replace our tissue that is damaged with the scar formation. But look at this diagram. Not only we have like a small area that is replaced by scar, but the whole organ is actually altered in structure and function. Right, so fibrosis, fibrotic scarring, is a pathological wound healing. Connective tissue replaces normal parenchymal tissue to the extent that it goes unchecked. That's what fibrosis is, and leading to considerable tissue remodeling and the formation of permanent scar tissue. Okay. And now we're gonna look at cutaneous wound healing, step in tissue repair. Now let's look at steps first. So we're gonna start with inflammation, and wound fills with blood, right? So if you cut yourself, right, and it's not superficial cut, let's say you damage both epidermis and dermis, then those are steps your body will take to heal. So it's going to start with inflammation, and blood will leak out of damaged blood vessels. Then clot will form. Number 3, migration of fibroblast and white blood cells to the wound. Fibroblast promotes tissue regeneration, and scar is formed. Right, so now let's go ahead and look into more detail. So here's our first stage that's called inflammatory stage. So remember, we're going to start with inflammation. Severed blood vessels bleed and inflammatory chemicals are released. So here you have cut that is pretty deep because you go beyond epidermis. So that's epidermis, so you go deep into dermis, right? Now, epidermis is avascular, but dermis is highly vascular. So we're gonna cut through blood vessels, and of course, we're gonna fill in with blood, right? This area will fill in with blood. Plus, those damaged tissue start secrete chemicals. See, shown here in this blue color. Those are inflammatory chemicals. They will start process of inflammation. So here it says inflammatory chemicals are released. Now, how the inflammation starts? Local blood vessels become more permeable, allowing white blood cells, fluid, clotting proteins, and other plasma proteins to seep into the injured area. Right, so those blood vessels, they dilate and became more permeable. So you can see white blood cells migrating to the site of the injury. Then a fluid will migrate as well, right? Plus clotting proteins, plasma proteins. So we have chemicals and cells migrating from blood vessels to the site of the injury. And clotting occurs. So surface dries and form a scab. Now, what happened next? Well, next we have our proliferation and migratory phase. Right, so the clot is replaced. So we already have this migration of white blood cells, and we start seeing migration of cells called fibroblasts. Now, these fibroblasts start depositing collagen, and we have white blood cells, collagen fibers, and that's called granulation tissue. Right, so the clot now is replaced by granulation tissue, which restores the vascular supply. And granulation tissue, as I already said, is just fibroblast, collagen, and white blood cells. Fibroblast produces collagen fibers that bridge the gap. Macrophages, that is a type of white blood cells, phagocytize cells debris, and surface epithelial cells multiply and migrate over the granulation tissue. Right, so here's your granulation tissue that is formed, and again, it's formed by fibroblast, white blood cells, macrophages, that is another type of white blood cells. But on the top of it, the epithelial tissue will migrate and seals this granulation tissue, right? Because epithelial tissue, remember, you have stem cells in the stratum basal. Those stem cells will divide and they will replace. That's going to be regeneration. But here, look, we have our scar formation. So that was our proliferation and migratory phase after inflammatory phase. And then we have maturation and remodeling. So the fibrosed area matures and contracts, right? So it will fibrosed area, it will contract to bring this part of the wound together. Epithelium thickens, right? So here we replace epithelium that was damaged. A fully regenerated epithelium with the underlying area of scar tissue will result from this tissue repair. Now, remember, epithelial tissue heals by regeneration. So we'll replace epithelial tissue with epithelial tissue. And this connective tissue that is underneath epithelial tissue, part of the dermis, will heal by fibrosis. So well, it's not really, okay, let's go back. So I'll show you again what we cover over here. So we will repair by scar formation. It's not really fibrosis because we will not alter the function and structure to the degree when it goes unchecked. But we will replace the epithelial tissue with, connective tissue in dermis with scar tissue, right? So we will have scar underneath the regenerated epithelium. Okay, so let me see what else we have. Right, so let's kind of review it one more time. So we're gonna start with inflammation and wound fills with blood. Then we form clot. Then fibroblast and white blood cells will migrate to the wound. Fibroblast promote tissue regeneration. So what fibroblast gonna do? Fibroblast will start depositing collagen. All these damaged cells, damaged debris will be removed by macrophages, and then we will have formation of the scar underneath the fully regenerated epithelium, because epithelium will regenerate and it will seal this granulation tissue that is formed, right? Then epithelial tissue fill in this area where we had scab before, right? So over here you can see the epithelium thickens and fibrosed area mature and contract, and result will be scar tissue underneath epithelial tissue, right? And the very last slide, we're gonna look at tissue and aging, so how tissue change with age. Now, we have reduced elasticity, decreased collagen fibers. If we have muscles, we will see muscle atrophy. So muscles became smaller. They replaced by fat, by adipose tissue. Nerve impulses slows down. And if you look at this diagram here, you see a newborn, adult, and old person. What changes happen in the DNA even? In the DNA, we have the part of the DNA, at the end of DNA, we have structure called telomeres, and the long telomeres means less DNA damage. So we have long telomeres in adult, medium telomeres, and I guess telomeres is the part of DNA, or short telomeres. When we shorten the telomeres, we increase chances of DNA mutation. Now look, in a newborn, we have low INK4A proteins, and those are cell cycle inhibitors. So we have low INK4A protein. So we do not inhibit cell cycle, and cell divide, and they replace the damaged cells. Now we will have, again, here we have increase of those proteins, so we inhibit cell cycle even more, right, with when we get older, and that prevent the cell division, and that means that we will not be able to replace cells as fast as we did when we were younger. Now here's a low DNA damage, modest and high DNA damage, and so all these changes in DNA can lead to formation of tumor and possible development of the cancer. Right, so let's again recall. We're talking about all tissues here, not the skin, right? We're talking about that all tissue will have reduced elasticity, decreased collagen, atrophy, nerve impulses slow down. We will increase of the cell cycle inhibitor proteins. We will increase the DNA damage, and then can lead also to the formation of tumors and malignant tumor, that is cancer. Okay, so that's it for this lecture. Thank you for watching, and I hope it was helpful. Also, this chapter that covers tissues, I already recorded 2 previous lectures, and I will leave the link to those lectures in the description box for this video. So please watch those videos as well. And okay, I will talk to you next time. Bye.